Welcome back to Oh and Another Thing. We have a fully loaded episode for you guys. Again, we are recording on Monday evening as opposed to our usual Tuesday or Friday morning podcast. We're going to still give it to you on Tuesday and still be here for you when you wake up Wednesday morning at least still. But we're coming to you and recording on Monday. We're going to not be able to record on Tuesday, so we wanted to not miss it because it's a very important week, a lot going on. We have a lot to talk about, so we're going to dive on in and first start out with some headlines. As you know, the president spent, and I don't want to make this all about the president, but we'll start with the president because we are expecting him to, as the Washington Post is saying right here, deliver remarks at the White House here soon. And not a moment too soon, of course, from the president to finally come out and speak to the nation. It's not like it's been 72 hours or however long it's been that we haven't really heard from the president aside from via a tweet or from back and forth with a press poll. So the president is going to give us a straightforward presidential address tonight from the White House. So we are awaiting to see what he says there, but not exactly eagerly because we kind of have an idea, at least I have an idea what I think he's going to say, which will be, we urge you not to continue to be so violent and keep doing this and that and the other thing. The memory of George Floyd wouldn't have wanted this, blah, 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 misinterpret the situation, blah, 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 blah. We reserve the right to go after you as organized Antifa terrorists, and we will lock you up and this and that and the other thing, so don't go out tonight and cause trouble in D.C. or else you'll be locked up. Maybe that's what he's going to say, and that's what I would expect him to say, because I think that is the mind frame Donald Trump is in right now. And I don't usually jump to that conclusion quickly because I try to be pretty level-headed with everything. I try not to jump in and say, well, this is the worst case scenario that we are in here, or the president is definitely trying to go beyond his constitutional powers. I forgot to do introductions. Your host, Vince Petrone, producer Bertram Beans, Giovanna with us in studio today, sneezing and giving us information and doing research for us. What was I saying before that? We'll see if it's from the bunker or from the desk. He's going to speak to the nation tonight. He's going to reinforce what he already has been saying to governors. That's where we're going. The phone call with governors that he had, which shows us where his mind is at in all of it. And it is, his mind is at a place where he is a tyrant quashing a coup against himself. That is what Donald Trump views this as. Donald Trump does not view this as a Black Lives Matter protest. Donald Trump does not view this as protests in the memory of George Floyd, of Ahmaud Arbery, of any of the recent victims or past victims of Breonna Taylor, of any of the past more recent victims of police murder. He misses that is the point of all this and sees it as a referendum on him. And he views it as, again, a tyrant would view it, a violent coup coming to take him out of power, which is very dangerous. And it showed today on that phone call with governors that got leaked to us. And it should be a bigger deal, that tape that got leaked to us, because in those leaks you hear what, and I said it on Twitter, and I know it'll be cliche at some point once people start talking about it, these should be our Nixon tapes. We have him, the president, now on tape after spending a night with the lights off at the White House, locked himself into a bunker to avoid something that was not going to happen to him anyway. People coming into the White House to take him out because people can't get into the White House, as he bragged about earlier in the day on Twitter. But saying that he wants governors to start, what'd he say? Not manhandling. I forget, but he wants them to start being violent with these protesters. The words he used were steering in that direction, that I want you to be violent with protesters, I want you to arrest protesters, hold them for 10 years in some cases, he said. Full-on unhinged ramblings of a dictator. Again, calling for police to use brutality, calling for governors to ask for police and National Guard members to use brutality, to arrest protesters, hold protesters against their will. People just using and exercising their First Amendment right to protest and to exercise free speech, to lock them up for 10 years. That way it doesn't happen again. That's the only way to keep it from happening again. I'm paraphrasing, but that is close to a quote he had on this leaked phone call with governors, which you can find Yamiche Alcindor has it on her Twitter if you want to go listen to the full 50-minute conversation between Trump and governors where he says that they are being weak and they are coming off as jerks because you're coming off as real jerks right now because you're not arresting and killing protesters left and right. So he's telling them they look like real jerks. You can catch that whole phone call again on Yamiche Alcindor's Twitter page. I'm sure it's somewhere else by now. That's just where I found it. But it really is the unhinged rantings of a tyrant who feels that this really is all about him, and it is not. And I worry that is part of his goal and his campaign's goal right now, because they know that they cannot win a battle of civil rights. Obviously, a Donald Trump campaign winning a battle of civil rights is completely unprecedented and sounds like something out of some kind of weird, I can't even think of what reality that would be and where Donald Trump's campaign was on the winning side of a civil rights issue or a civil rights battle. Parallel universe type thing. So what they're doing is they're trying to shift the narrative over to it being anti-Trump, anti-Republican, anti-American protests. That's why they've made such a big deal out of it being Antifa protesters. That's why they've gone out of their way. There's multiple reasons they've gone out of their way to classify Antifa as a terrorist organization, but this is one of them. The other reasons are that, and let's get extra dark here, and is this a little conspiracy theorist tonight? Am I coming off too conspiracy theories, or are these legitimate fears that I have right now?
What was your fear?
The fear is that, and I've talked about this with you yesterday, is that by classifying these protesters or classifying Antifa as a terrorist organization, it pretty much allows for police.
He can arrest anyone.
Yeah,
he can't prove that
he can pretty much.
Part of them.
So the bottom line is that Antifa is not actually an organization. There is no organizational structure within Antifa. There is no card that says you are in Antifa. There is no membership that says you are in Antifa. There is no way of discerning if someone is Antifa other than just to assume they are in Antifa. And if being Antifa is a bad thing, then I don't know. Maybe I don't know. I don't know where I was going with that. If being anti-fascist is a bad thing, then call me a bad guy.
We should all be Antifa.
We should all be Antifa, really. But if being Antifa is a terrorist, I guess call me.
No.
Anyway, I digress. But he does this because it makes it seem like anybody who gets arrested from these protests, to his base, only to his base, that's the only people this works with, and that's another thing. Oh, and another thing of this is he can only communicate to his base. By saying that these are Antifa terrorists, that these are any kind of terrorist, it makes it seem like it is more reasonable, more logical, more okay to use extrajudicial force, to throw people on the ground, to slam them against walls, to arrest them, to drag them through the dirt, to beat them with clubs, to pile on in groups of 5-on-1, to mace and pepper spray and hit people in kneecaps and brutalize protesters out there. Again, just exercising their First Amendment right. But they'll do it under the guise of fighting terror. These are Antifa terrorists trying to attack your American way of life, so it is cool, it is fine. So what Donald Trump is doing here is saying that these people are coming to get me. This isn't about what's going on. This is about me. Everybody pay attention to me and these people who don't like me. I am America. They don't like me. They don't like America. When that is not what is happening. There are groups of people doing that. But that is not the message here. That is not what people should be taking away. And I fear that the goal of Donald Trump is to be, that is what's taken away here. That people take away, these protests weren't about George Floyd ever. They were always about Donald Trump. That's what he's going to try to sell this as. This was never about getting justice for George Floyd or getting justice for any other victims. This has always been about making Donald Trump look bad. All about these Antifa terrorists trying to slow down the economy more and more so I don't get reelected. And that's the view and the way he sees this. And that is why we are also so far from a solution. I would kill right now to have literally any other president. I would even take Richard fucking Nixon, because Nixon at least knew how to manipulate people. Donald Trump doesn't know how to speak to anybody other than the 37% of people that are as blackout dumb as he is, which is staggering to say that there are 37% of people that are as blackout dumb as he is. But those are the only people he can talk to. Again, he's going to give a statement tonight. He might be giving it right now. Again, I'm not tuned into it. I am doing this instead, and I don't care what he has to say because I'm sure it won't be a uniting message. And if it comes close to it, thank goodness, but we'll know it's not from him because we know where he stands. We know what he wants and all this because he made it, again, brutally honest and vividly clear today in a phone call that got leaked to literally everybody, and all of us can hear it and see what the president really wants to have happen, what the president really thinks of all of this. We do not have a leader right now in the White House. If we had Barack Obama, if we had George Bush, if we had Bill Clinton, if we had literally any president right now who could go up there and give the same old bullshit, phony, we are in this together. It's not even a bullshit, phony thing half the time, but just go up and say the usual fluff. Go up and deliver the usual, we are a country together, we can fight these outside actors, we can fight these weaknesses in our system, we can fight these glaring moments of oppression, we can fight these things. Just say the basic bullshit to get people to feel like there is a leader, to feel like there is some kind of semblance of guidance right now. But he can't even do that because he doesn't know how to speak to anybody else, but again, the 37% of people that are as blackout stupid as he is. And it's dangerous and staggering because these are also, again, people that do vote and people that are also, again, so blackout stupid they are missing the point of what is right in front of them and believe, these people also believe that the Blue Lives Matter argument is a totally fine and understandable and logical argument whenever it is far from it. And that's what we're going to take on here for the rest of the show is the Blue Lives Matter argument. And it comes down to this. Black people have never had a choice. This is the end of the Blue Lives Mattering argument, the end of the cop self-defense argument. Black people haven't had a choice in their lives or hadn't for a long time. They have more so of one now than they used to. Thank goodness. Thankfully, they have a bit more control than, say, 60 years ago or even, you could argue, 30 or even 10 years ago in some cases over some parts of their lives. And sadly, we are still the in-progress stage of racial equality and racial relations in this country, even though, again, we've been here for fucking too long now. But do not forget that even home ownership is something that black folks haven't had freedom over until more recently than it should have been. Be it in city housing codes or private housing codes and zoning laws, localities and the U.S. government have built segregation and divides into our society since and even before the New Deal was in place. Our neighborhoods here, this very neighborhood we're in that we record in every day, is a perfect example of this kind of zoning. It's an interesting neighborhood. We have a really nice neighborhood. I'm not going to say what it's called. And here in such and such Queens, we live in what is kind of the perfect example of urban development in the New Deal era. A north and south side split up by a physical, I guess, is he speaking soon? Nah, that's fine. A physical barrier that splits two sides, be it train tracks, be it train tracks or a subway, highway, expressway, shopping center, mall, factories, anything. Some kind of divide to keep the sides separate. Now, there's two sides, obviously, to these neighborhoods, and our neighborhood is very similar. So on one side, you have, not to say that the apartments on the other side of the tracks, on the side tracks we're on, aren't absolutely beautiful, aren't nice apartments, aren't livable, nice quality homes. But on the other side of the tracks, they have sprawling gardens. They have single family homes. They have, again, yards, gardens, spaces of their own, personal parking. They don't have to share space with people. They have their own front door. They have their own mailboxes. They have their own everything. They have their own homes, actual homes to their own in a nice, quiet, safe, semi-affordable, depending, but at this point, priced out of what most of us could afford, but back whenever it was established, pretty affordable, I'm sure. Close to transportation, adequate transportation, easy to get to work in Manhattan, parks, schools, lots of parks, nice parks also. But then you have the other side of the tracks. our side of the tracks. The side of the tracks where you have multifamily units. You have people living in more high-rise buildings, more apartment style, more people, smaller spaces, more people, less resources, further from transportation, further from work, closer to factories, closer to pollutants, closer to things, just a less desirable place to live, a less desirable place to be. Still nice, still fine, but not as good as what is on the other side of the tracks. And because they are put into these and forced into these smaller areas, because remember, the nicer housing on the other side of the track was built and funded in certain ways that it excluded funding going to... Okay, I'm getting off track here. Whenever places would apply to build in the city and build in cities, they had to get zoning permits, and they had to say what it was for, and they had to get a certain amount, and the city would give out a certain amount of funding to make affordable housing units. Okay, so the city would subsidize building companies to build these affordable units. Now, however, the city and a lot of these companies would put stipulations that they would not loan out to these companies if they were to give homes to black ownership, therefore making it harder for black ownership to get black homeowners to, one, get a home, and then second, get a good, decent home in an area that is more desirable than one that has been traditionally available to them or that they are forced to take because of who they are. It's redlining, it's zoning, and it is built into our system and is a part of, and another reason why the statement Blue Lives Matter is so stupid, because remember, blue lives, you all have this choice. You have chosen to uphold the law and said that you will uphold the law equally for everybody. That is the choice you made. These people, the black people of our country, do not make the choices of how their lives go more often than not. They have power. Absolutely. Everybody has power in their lives to make it go how they want it to. But there are more outside factors manipulating the life of a black person today than there are of a white person today. And it's been that way for a long, long time. And that is what people need to understand. That is what these protesters want people to see. That a white person doesn't run the risk of having their life strangled away from them literally because a cop won't take their knee off their neck after 9 minutes of it being there. That is something that will not happen to me. That is not something that will happen to any other white podcast host. That will not happen to us. I have a good story. I was walking around one night in Brooklyn. This was years ago. This was probably 4-5 years ago now. Me, two other friends. One of our friends is me, another white kid, and one of our other friends who is black. We're walking from the bodega in our neighborhood. I have a roast beef hoagie and an Arizona tea in my hand, as I traditionally do. That is, if you want to set a Vince trap, roast beef hoagie, oil and vinegar, light mayo, provolone cheese, lettuce, tomato, pickle. Untoasted, white on a hero roll. Arizona iced tea. Or sparkling water, more so now. That's a Vince trap. I have that with me. My other friend, with him, has, I forget what's his, I'm not going to say any names. I forget what he got at the bodega, but also in his pocket, he had a bag of marijuana. Now, my other friend, not going to use his name either, our friend who is black, comes out of the bodega. He bought two loose cigarettes, tobacco cigarettes, a sandwich, and a drink also, and he had the cigarettes behind his ear. We're walking to our apartment, which is, again, not more than maybe 900 feet from the bodega at the time. This cop car spins in, does a whole little burnout, Fast and Furious style, right up to the curb. These two cops hop out, and they run up to us. And they go up to our friend, and they say, "Hey, man, what do you got behind your ears?" Bear in mind that the person who has these things behind his ears is a black person, has two cigarettes behind his ears, a sandwich, a drink, and nothing else on him. Whereas my other friend has a bag of marijuana. My friend who had the bag of marijuana and looks an awful lot like me and him did not get one question from those police officers that night. They did not ask us one question. But they asked our friend who was black, is still around today, hopefully. I haven't talked to him in a long time, but I hope Greg, hope you're still out there, buddy. But they did not ask us a single question. They asked him every question they could. And there is only one reason that they did that. And it's because of who he is. And it's the same reason. It's why, and it's our understanding now, the president has given his speech. We didn't take a break. We finished. We were talking while he was talking. He just finished up. Apparently, he is declaring as close to martial law has ever been declared in this country. It sounds as if there's a nationwide 7 p.m. curfew. He is deploying them.
I think that might just be D.C.
In D.C. Well, he's deploying.
Was unclear with the way he said it, though.
He's deploying military
To every state.
personnel to literally every state in case they're needed. And it sounded like he said it'll be his call if they act violently.
Yeah, he said if governors don't want to deploy their own personnel and their own police and everything, he's going to deploy his own and just send military everywhere. He's sending them there anyway.
So the president is basically instituting martial law because he feels like he is getting a bad shake out of this. What a little garbage man. The president has officially taken away your First Amendment right to protest by declaring martial law and saying that he is encouraging the United States military to arrest and hold people on, I don't know what even kind of charges. What do we got here? Passing this over to me.
That was a good quote from it. Sorry, turn off my volume.
I don't know how to do that. I don't know how your computer works. I got it. Don't use a Macintosh. I have an HP. I'm poor. Okay, so this is from Cameron Peters on Twitter. He says, Trump speaking in the Rose Garden just now. As we speak, I am dispatching... Should I do it in the voice? No. Okay. As we speak, I am dispatching thousands and thousands of heavily armed soldiers, military personnel, and law enforcement officers to stop the rioting, looting, vandalism, assaults, and wanton destruction of property. Because Donald Trump thinks that adding more police to stir up problems at a peaceful protest is the solution to all of this.
After just calling himself an ally of peaceful protesters.
After calling himself an ally of peaceful protesters. Because let me tell you what happens at these rallies, and what is not even rallies, at these protests. Every time they seem to be going peacefully. What did we see last night? Last night I saw one where there was a group of protesters on their knees. They were taking a knee. They were taking it for 8 minutes. They finished. They were applauding. And out of nowhere, these police form a line and run right into them, causing them to disperse into a small group so they could take each one on individually. Absolute military brutality tactics, just absolute military strategy against the people they're supposed to be there to serve and protect. Do not forget that whenever you dispatch police to a protest, they're there to protect the protesters. They're not there to attack the protesters. However, it appears that they end up attacking them no matter what happens. And I know we keep saying that this is just one cop, and that being an okay answer to nearly 200 years of white supremacy and white supremacy thinking. The police, and this is where people get lost for some reason, don't get to choose whom they police and how they police them. They are to police everyone the same way. They do not. I've seen a lot of really dumb things on Facebook today. Aside from people saying that the president has every right to do this, aside from people saying that Antifa forces are coming into Du Bois, Pennsylvania to reap havoc across the town. That they're going to come in to your small rural communities and they're coming to terrorize you to sow destruction in your communities. That's what I saw someone post. Someone posted from the 3 Percenters on their Facebook. Someone that I went to school with posted from a white supremacist group. A group of people that are notorious for being the people to defend neo-Nazis at Charlottesville. Shared a post from them saying that Antifa was coming to terrorize the community, and they think that's a normal thing. They think it's okay for the president to declare these. If you can hear a lot of banging of pots and pans in the background, I'm on a roll. They're doing the 7 o'clock cheering for the nurses and doctors, so that's what you're hearing right now. Like I was saying, I've seen a lot of really dumb things on Facebook today, and one of the things I saw was this white lady, who had already been skeptical of protesters and what they stand for, went and reported on her Facebook how a protest was going. She uploaded a clip about 10 seconds long of the protest she was at. Of course, just people kind of milling around, nothing happening really. It was just 10 seconds of people pretty much just standing. People gathered, which we aren't thrilled that people are just kind of gathered on top of one another right now because coronavirus is still out there. We have not beat it yet. So we're exchanging the good of the movement for the bad of the coronavirus here, so let's just be wary of all of that. However, she said that the protest she was at was 80% of protesters were being violent and causing trouble. And then she said something about how 500 people were there, even though in the video it looked like there might have been like 20 at best. And then she said that about 480 of them were causing trouble, which is where she got her 80% number from, obviously, with no evidence of it, no specific citation, no video, no sign of actual violence. There was nothing really there untoward. Nothing bad happening. But yet she was making this post, making this status, hopping in and fueling this narrative going on Facebook that these protesters are out there causing nothing but trouble. Being just nefarious and causing trouble. Just being wrong and taking away from the movement. Which, yes, there are some people doing that, but they are not part of the protesters. Keep that in mind. Earlier in the day, the same person had posted a picture of a looter with a handful of liquor. Pants falling down, unshaven, looking dirty, looking like they've been out all night. Saying something about how they are so upset about the death of George Floyd that they burnt down a liquor store and took everything inside. That's how upset they are. In an attempt to be funny, but also, one, you can't be funny about this, and two, in an attempt to devalue and take away from the movement. All at the same time, she kept going on and saying how she's all in support of what's happening. I fully support what's going on with the protests of George Floyd's death. I've never seen something so heinous in my entire life, they say. But yet here they are, sharing these pictures and these memes, making it look like the people out there protesting the murder of George Floyd are nothing but drunk degenerates, which is a stereotype people have, black people in this country already. Something to bear in mind. And it shouldn't come as a surprise because these people are not very well educated and these people do not pay attention. These people have not been out of the state of Pennsylvania. These people have not seen anything outside of their immediate area. And most of their 28 years, since most of the people are pretty much in my age bracket, but even some of them haven't seen anything outside of their little bubble in 60 years, 70 years for some of them. So they have these notions and they have these beliefs of everybody that isn't them. So they see these actions as being fine because they believe that this is how these people act. They have this belief in their head that the real reason this is happening is because people in black communities can't wait to loot and pillage and ruin their communities because they can steal again. That is what people believe. That is truly and honestly what people believe and what has been all over my Facebook, and it is disgusting. And then they start saying, but look what they're doing to their communities. It's their community. Can you believe they're doing this to it? Can you believe they're burning it down like this and throwing bricks and digging out and destroying all their businesses? Guess what? Like we talked about earlier in this rant at this point, they were forced into these communities by us, by our zoning laws, by our government's bias towards them. They are forced into these communities. These are their communities. They can treat them and act in them how they want, protest in them how they want. It's us who's invading them, gentrifying them, going in, having police officers target them and brutalize them and have them in these congregated, congested areas that they know that they can target and go in and cause havoc and cause trouble, and they go in and they do it on a daily basis. Anyway. And you know who else said to the people saying, but they're destroying their community? You know who else said that? People in Watts, people in Newark, people in Chicago, whenever their cities were in the middle of riots over civil rights back in the 60s. And you know who I bet also sat and snickered and laughed and made fun of those protesters, called them rioters, called them the N-word, used poor language toward them to distort the movement, said, can you believe they're doing this to their communities? The same grandparents that you say you can't talk to at family gatherings because they're too behind. They're too backwards. Well, guess who sounds a lot like their grandparents today? Every single one of you saying, why are they doing this to their communities? Because that was the refrain of the white 1960s. Can you believe these African Americans are doing this? We can't give them any more rights than they already have narrative. That was the rallying cry of the right wing in the 60s and the 70s. Look what they do to their communities after we just gave them voting rights, after we just took away segregation, after we just said they could start being in society with us and attending our schools. Look how they behave. That's what they said then, and that's what you're saying now. And that's what you sound like now. You do not sound educated. You do not sound like someone who has a grip on how the world is. You sound like someone who hasn't, again, seen anything outside of their window in 40 years. You sound stupid, and you need to stop talking about these kind of things whenever you don't have the knowledge, you don't have the experience, you don't have the foresight or the intention behind the words to speak on it. Because I know I don't have all the experience. I haven't had to go through the negative experiences of a black person. I have not had to do that. But I've at least educated myself on it. I've at least sought out the information, sought out the tools to know that this is not normal, that police officers, the National Guard, let's start with the police officer, we'll get to the National Guard, because their job kind of ends up being to come in and kick the shit out of people after the police can't do it anymore. The police are gearing up, night in and night out for the past week, going into cities as if they are ready to fight literal terrorists in Afghanistan. Jesus Christ. Jennifer Afghanistan. As if they are fighting terrorists in Afghanistan. They show up, helmets on, bulletproof vests, automatic rifles, side pieces, batons, ready to go, rolling 10, 25, 10, 15 deep at times. All ready to go, all ready to have their own slice of violence. And don't forget, whenever you say don't be violent to these protesters, do not be violent to the people that are not outside agitators. Don't forget what started all of this was an act of unwarranted violence toward a black person that ended up costing them their life. It ends up costing them their lives. You don't get to tell people how to protest when the thing they're protesting literally is their livelihood. And if you're going to say be peaceful, you better not be telling them to be peaceful after someone literally just killed one of them. After someone was just murdered, you don't get to say be peaceful anymore. Peace has not been a part of this for a long time. And if you want to say that riots don't work, I dare you to find something that didn't change after a riot. And I dare you to find something that did change after a peaceful protest. Go look through the record. See what happened after the... What happened on the Edmund Pettus Bridge? I don't think I said that right. But you guys know what I'm talking about. Look what happened in Selma. And what happened after Selma. The Voting Rights Act passed. Riots, brutality, leads to change. To say that is not true is to lie and to mislead people. Peaceful protests haven't done anything. You keep saying, do what Martin Luther King did, but don't forget, you guys killed Martin Luther King too. There is no right way to protest whenever you're protesting the life of a black person, the value of that life, protesting for the value of that life. There is no defense for it from these police officers. They don't do this for, and I don't think they should do it for these events, but they don't gear up like they're ready to go to full-on war in the Middle East whenever it's Pride. They don't gear up whenever it's a biker rally. They don't gear up whenever it's one of these freedom marches. They don't gear up freedom marches. Jesus, whatever they were calling themselves a couple weeks ago whenever everybody was mad about not going to Fuddruckers. They don't gear up whenever it's Pride. They don't gear up for a March for Lives. They don't gear up for any of these other things. They reserve those tactics for these situations. Whenever people are out protesting, and rightfully protesting, the murder of a black person, an innocent black person. That's whenever the riot shields come out. That's when the rubber bullets come out. That's when the tear gas comes out. It's not whenever... It's for no other situation. I'm not saying that it should come out for any of those situations. I, in fact, believe that we should stop funding these kind of things. We should stop buying weapons for police departments. If a police department finds that they're in a situation where they need to use a baton, it seems like 95% of the time, from what we have seen, they're the ones causing that situation where they need a baton. I'm not one for police violence at any event. But it is shocking, and it is evident, and I think it is telling to see the events where you do see, the protests where you do see all this military-grade equipment that we've been paying for is always for the same people. It's reserved for the same people and used on the same people. And we know why it is used on those people, and it's because of who they are and what they are there to represent. And that is the point of these protests, and that is what people are missing. That is what these idiots on Facebook and the idiot in the White House are missing, is that what these protests are about. It is not about anything other than the fact that we live in a country that for 200 plus years has put people inside of a system that makes it impossible for them to get out of and to succeed the same way other peoples in that society do. And it oftentimes ends up with them losing their lives. And that is the point of it. And that is what you were here to listen to and hear us talk about here on Oh and Another Thing. And that is what we have for you this week. We will be back hopefully on Friday with more Oh and Another Thing. Thank you guys for listening. Have a great rest of your week. If you are going out to protest, be safe out there. The president doesn't want you doing it. It sounds like he's going to try to make sure nobody ever does it again. So, thank you for listening. Have a great rest of your week. We'll be back on Friday. Be safe out there.